I'm Morgan. I'm originally from Wausau, Wisconsin. I went to undergrad at Carroll University in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and now I am a MD candidate at the Medical College of Wisconsin here in Milwaukee. I'm just grabbing my link really quick. I'm going to drop it in the chat, and if you could all go to it, please. This is a program called Mural. It's an online like collaboration style format. And if you guys have issues, I have a PDF of it too that I can just share my screen. So. Oop, I accidentally sent it just to one person. Okay, there we go.
Says to sign up. That could take people some time.
Oh, it should just, anybody that has access to the link should be able to use it. Oh, wait, here we go. Here's a visitor link.
I can share the screen too if we need to.
Yeah, the second link is a visitor link, so that should work. Is everybody able to access it? You see a bunch of animals, so I'm guessing that's a yes.
I was not able to get into it.
Neither am I.
The second link I was able to.
Oh, wait, something's happening now. Something's happening now.
Hold on.
Anybody still having issues?
Sorry, yes.
Let's see if we can share my screen. I have it on, so.
Sure.
I can see a bunch of people in here moving around.
Yeah, we can do both. We can have it on the screen so then they can.
Or do you want to share your screen, Morgan? Maybe that'll way.
Yeah.
If you don't want to, I can share mine, and then we can still see you then. Here we go.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, I found happenstance, and I was really fortunate too. I kind of just did a little research and found Matt, and Matt connected me to the summer program, and I applied and was lucky enough to be accepted. Since I'm a medical student, I have obviously great interest in healthcare, and in my past, I found it very difficult to find healthcare coverage belonging to a low socioeconomic status. So I wanted to see what healthcare coverage was like for Indigenous populations and look at barriers to access for them, as well as baseline knowledge for non-tribal healthcare providers. So because of the short time period that GLNARCH is, and the fact that there was COVID going on, Margaret suggested that I do a literature review. So that's primarily what I worked on this summer. So I identified barriers looking at historical, current, and even potential barriers that could make accessing and utilizing healthcare coverage difficult. And I wanted to see how those barriers played with one another, how they depended on one another as a whole. Then I wanted to assess the impact of these barriers in Wisconsin and the greater Bemidji area, and I think that will be what my actual study is, and hopefully next summer. Taking these barriers and looking which ones specifically affect people in Wisconsin, because a lot of the research that I read focused on large Native populations in Navajo. And then I want to consider these findings and establish a baseline of where they're at and how we can create educational tools to provide more information on IHS and urban health programs and stuff like that. So I'll kind of just briefly talk about some of the barriers, but I have them like in a wheel here of all the ones that I found that were pretty big. So number one was geographic barriers. Most of the IHS, when it was founded, was put on reservations, and so there wasn't a lot of access for people who lived in metropolitan areas. And one of the studies I was looking at did a huge survey, it's called the NSAF survey, and found that most of Native Americans lived in metropolitan areas. So then that, what do we do now that we have all of our health services on reservations and not in urban areas? And if you think about Milwaukee, Gerald Ignace is the only place in Milwaukee, and Milwaukee is a large geographic metropolitan area, and you can throw a rock and hit, a hospital, but not necessarily one that provides free healthcare services to indigenous populations. And another issue is like the IHS will contract out services that are not available, and it's not always guaranteed that those services that get contracted out will be fully covered. So that was a barrier, a big barrier. Next was education. One of the studies I was reading found that 20% of Native Americans did not even graduate high school, found that 49 to 59% were low in health literacy. However, I will say, whenever I was reading these articles, they often coincided health literacy with lack of English proficiency. And so I think, there's some limitations to the studies if you didn't provide the text in someone's, first language. And one of the biggest things that I noticed was a lot of times people would use tribal leaders or tribal health or tribal leaders and health practitioners. They wouldn't compensate them for their knowledge. And these have been practices that have been used for many, many, many years. So I was hoping that, we could look into doing alternative licensure, because if I create like an education program, I'd like to use tribal leaders and their cultures and medical practices. Next was cultural and social barriers. What this really boiled down to was the lack of trust. Due to the historical trauma and context, there's just a huge lack of trust between indigenous populations and non-tribal healthcare providers. And when the IHS was formed, it was primarily meant to be an urgency and emergency medicine and not the mainstay for healthcare. And that's currently what it is. And, due to the lack of funding, the goal would be to provide some type of trust. And when I was looking at what could, create, what could establish trust, right? Like trust has to be earned, not given. They said that people who said that if they received an apology, like a formal apology, that they would feel more open, and people who, recognize that there was a historical trauma and recognize that there continues to be a gap between the medical care and understanding of cultural beliefs for all minority populations, but especially for indigenous. Then next, I looked at funding. Again, I kind of touched on this already, but what surprised me was like the IHS spends about $2,800 on user population, where the rest of the US spends about $7,700 on user population. And, the lack of funding is evident. A lot of IHS relies on Medicaid, and unfortunately, Medicaid expansion is up to each state. So certain tribal organizations may have better access to funding versus others simply because the state decides what Medicaid can expand on. And then politics. I wanted to look to see if like registration or Wisconsin registration or voter registration and turnout had to do a lot with policy. And I saw that they recently made voting easier for tribal members. You don't require necessarily a tribal ID or your tribal ID does not require necessarily an address, and they increased funding and outreach. So that was really positive to hear. And but the main thing that I noticed was that Wisconsin specifically, I kept trying to find statistics on voting population demographics, but they always lumped minorities together. And if they did separate them, it was Black, Latinx, and then other. And that's something I found a lot in general, searching through the research, was that if Native Americans were included, they were always together. It was never separate tribes. And if it was separate tribes, it was always, again, it was the Navajo. And then finally, I'm just going to touch on this last one. There's a couple other ones, but healthcare providers. What was the most shocking thing to me was, this is from the American Medical Association, only 0.3% of practicing physicians are American Indian or Alaska Native. And people tend to trust their healthcare provider if they can relate to them, if they feel comfortable, if they trust them. And it's really hard to trust somebody if they don't understand your beliefs. You know, they're not like you. And for us, you know, there's so few providers. So hopefully in the future, I know one of the other people touched on this, they hope to increase people into pharmacy and PA and stuff like that. And that's my goal too. So some of the other barriers were policy and physical and mental health. And then this is what I gained from the program. I learned more about Native American healthcare, their coverage and policy. I had no idea what it entailed, and Margaret was not kidding when she said it was very complex. I became a better advocate for Indigenous people. I feel like I can speak more about healthcare policy and stuff like that. I gained an exceptional mentor. Margaret was very welcoming, wonderful, provided great insight. And I think the best part is that I had the opportunity to network with such amazing people, including the interns, as well as people at Gerald Ignace and other people in the GLNARCH program. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Does anybody from the CSAC committee or anybody else have questions for Morgan?
Yes.
Yes.
So hi, Morgan.
Hi.
First, thank you very much for your presentation and your work. I'm really happy, but even more, thank you for your study, for who you want to be and in service to the community. We just appreciate that. So thank you for that. I'm wondering, in your work, did you happen to look at any of the work that was done by Don Warren? Don is a physician and Oglala Lakota member. He's at the University of North Dakota, and he's very well versed in American Indian health policy around the country, and actually was nominated to be the Surgeon General. And so I would encourage you to look at his work. He actually also, if you have interest, he's a physician who also went and did a graduate degree, a one-year graduate degree at Harvard in policy. And if that is an area of interest of yours, I would also encourage you to contact him around his own study. And he actually has a program now at the University of North Dakota where he is, students are actually studying American Indian health policy as undergraduates and graduate students. So I just raise this up to you because of what you've done and where your interests may lie. And if I'm happy, Don is, others on the group know Don. I do as well, and I'm happy to make a link if that's desirable by you.
Yeah, actually, that would be wonderful. That's amazing. This is why I love getting together, like networking is amazing.
Sure, sure. And not to take anything away from Margaret and her work with you. I'm not commenting there. I'm just saying it might be valuable to talk to somebody who this is their passion. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rick.
Sure. And we'll work out, I'll confer with Amy and we'll work out how to get you the information or how I can make a link and you know, send an email and to Don and connect you. Okay.
Sure, sure.
Morgan, I really like how you scoped out this issue and got your and laid the foundation for some more very important work. So excellent work there. There definitely are opportunities to explore this further with the center. And I'm very pleased to hear that it went well with Margaret. And she's definitely got a lot of very valuable information and knowledge about navigating these systems with tribal people. What aspect of the project was most exciting to you in terms of what you'd like to do in the future?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think what excited me most was because I kind of went in with a personal bias, you know, as a minority myself and studying minority populations throughout my life. it tends to be always put on us as the ones who are uneducated. Us are the one, you know, we are the ones with the lack of health literacy. And I realized in this scenario, it was the complete reverse. Non-tribal members are the ones with lack of literacy on healthcare coverage. So I'm actually really excited to hopefully make a partnership with different tribal leaders, and, you know, hopefully COVID will be not as bad. Otherwise, we'll just do it on Zoom. But when I was talking with a lot of experts, they were saying what bothered them most is they were asking them to always put their knowledge in a PowerPoint and share, and like come to our school and share it, and not the other way around, like us coming to them to show, you know, on the reservation. So my hopes would be to educate my peers and colleagues and superiors by coming to the reservations after, you know, establishing obviously a relationship and partnership.
Well, that sounds like a good fit for NARCH. Yes, the in-person relationship building is a good part of it. Oh, Amy, I see Amy. Do you have something to say?
Oh, no. Well, no, I'm good. That's great.
It's great. Good work.
Yes, good work, Morgan. Thank you for sharing. And you know, if interns you don't know yet already, or Jeremy could tell you, you can do more than 1 year of NARCH research internship. So we're all open for you guys. If you're laying foundation of good work, we're happy to help you along.
Awesome. And I just want to let you know, I have a class that I'll have to jump into, so I probably have time for Janelle's, but then I'll have to hop off. So.
Okay, well,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Morgan. And